Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. I'm back here with a new video, which is going to be the Matchday 2 team review. And this is actually ahead of day 4 for Matchday 2. What we talked about when we were implementing the wildcard for Matchday 2 is we have the opportunity to actually change our team before Matchday 2 finishes and before the Uruguay-Portugal match finishes to actually make some transfers and actually incorporate some players that we'd like to have for Matchday 3, trying to guess and anticipate ahead of time possible rest and rotation. And this opportunity I think is fantastic because we did have an additional boosted transfer within the quarterfinal stages, which makes it less likely for us to use the wildcard there. And of course we're pursuing the strategy with the wildcard. I've got 58 points so far. I'm quite happy with the scope of this wildcard, and I still think I'm in a great position to once again set up my team for Matchday 3. Trying to look at which teams might need their players to start, which teams might need their players to be rested. If you can actually look at my Matchday 2 team here, I've got the Brazilian players Marquinhos and Richarlison, and there's a high chance they could be rested because you have players like Gabriel Jesus or even Eder Militao who can actually fill in for players like Marquinhos. But I think, of course, someone like Thiago Silva could step in instead. You could also see someone like Alexandro, who might play the next 2 games for Brazil, and actually get rested for someone like Alex Telles in Matchday 3. So I don't really want to pick some teams like Brazil if they get the win tomorrow. Whereas with Spain, they're still quite in the thick of it because of the draw versus Germany. France is a little bit of a different situation, I feel like, where they don't have too much depth in some specific locations. We look at someone like Lewandowski, who can easily be replaced to Mbappe. Mbappe might be chasing the golden boot. Someone like Theo Hernandez might also stay in my team, just simply because he is one of the remaining left backs for France, and I think they will still try and actually win that last game. As far as Shaw and Otamendi, I think, of course, Shaw is someone to keep, but I think Poland is going to be also fighting for their chances to get out of this group, so Otamendi doesn't seem like someone I'd like to go for. Lewandowski also finding some form in the previous game doesn't really bode well for going for Otamendi. Di Maria is still quite interesting because I don't think Poland are exceptional as a team whatsoever, and Di Maria still looks like a very active, very influencing player, and therefore I'd like to keep him. We're seeing a lot of key passes from him still. Gonda, someone I'd like to move away from, just simply because of the tough matchup, and also because Rocher opens him up as another option for Uruguay in Matchday 3. And with the Dutch players, we haven't really gotten much from Bergwijn so far, and I've been very disappointed overall. With Saka and Bellingham, I think there's a chance that they could be rotated and rested. Saka has a chance to maybe get rotated with Foden, who didn't actually get any play time in the previous match. Bellingham, I think, has been fantastic. I think he'll start again. But we also saw a substitution for Bellingham out for Jordan Henderson. That was a little bit dismaying to see, but it also suggests that he's not going to play the full 90 minutes potentially if Gareth Southgate can rest him. And I think he will be seen as a key player. And maybe if England get off to a flying start, he will be one of those who will be taken off early so he can get rested, because he has played quite a lot of minutes so far. With no per and the Dutch defence, I think it's fantastic for Qatar. So great scope to actually employ those players. I've got 58 points overall so far, hovering around 19,000 in the world, but I don't think too many people have a double up of Brazil. Hopefully I'll get some dividends from Charles and Marquinhos, which I think are the best picks so far from this Brazilian team. And let's see what happens in the end of Matchday 2. But for now, I'm actually going to show you guys my draft wildcard. So here we go. So starting off with the team here for Matchday 2 and our kind of last wildcard transfers. The idea here is we're moving in some of the locked players that we had for Matchday 2 and transferring them into players who are yet to play for Matchday 2, or some players who simply we prefer their Matchday 3 game. So a good example would be Bruno Fernandes. He still has to play his game tomorrow, but if you transfer out someone like Marcos Asensio into Bruno Fernandes, then you can't get Fernandes for Matchday 2, but he will impact your Matchday 3 team anyways. So if you'd like to get some of the Uruguay and Portuguese players, do make those transfers now. And if you want to even get some of those players ahead of time and want to do a little bit of a last-ditch punt for Matchday 2, I will also encourage you to do so, but think about how that impacts your budget. As I said here, my budget is going to be 97.5 million, so that's going to be how my defense is lining up. Here are the clean sheet odds as well, very kindly presented to you guys by 11fi and Schadenfreude. Please check out the link in the description below. They've been creating some fantastic data that we've been using to actually create our suggested teams so far. I also would say there's plenty of picks out there that we've missed out. There's so many teams in this tournament, so many great players that will probably have great games. We also missed out, for example, the Iranian defender last game week out, and ultimately you're not going to capture everything, but if you try to get a well-rounded team, I think that's the best approach here, and the clean sheet odds are the absolute top basis for getting points, because so far, even though defenders get goal scored points, and we saw someone like Alphonso Davies get them, it's very hard to actually bank in them. I think clean sheets is a much safer way to play. Noppert and Dumfries have fantastic clean sheet odds. Dumfries here is re-injected back into the team, and the reason why here is because Cancelo and Alba just simply have worse games to play, less clean sheet odds, even though I would say Portugal actually have a relatively good game for that last standing match. They could, however, beat Uruguay, and we don't even know the result of that game. So I would actually advise a little bit of caution of bringing some of the Portuguese players, because we could see a lot of rest for them. As far as Shaw, they still have everything to play for, just to get first place in the group, likely because of the result versus the USA. USA also looked relatively good last time out. I would say USA were still probably the slightly better team than Wales when it came to attacking chances and creating them. They made a really silly tackle in that game versus Wales, which was Wales' only goal in the tournament, a penalty through Bale. And I would say Shaw has a great opportunity here to get clean sheets versus Wales. Of course, yes, this is going to be a very tough matchup, and Wales are going to be fighting for their tournament lives as well. But I just can't really see England not getting a clean sheet. I think Shaw's going to be a great punt here. The issue with the midfield for England, in my opinion, is that there's going to be a little bit more scope for rest, where Shaw is such a standout player for them, still looks incredibly fit. I can't really see why he'd be benched for this game for any other left back for this English national team. For Theo Hernandez, I would say this is the one player that we can maybe think about moving away from if we get some wind of news that he might not start in this game. The issue with France, though, is that they have very few left backs to actually cover. Now that Lucas Hernandez is out with an ACL rupture, this actually means that Theo Hernandez might be forced to play this game. I also think that they'll probably try and win this game as well, so I'll see what Deschamps does. He might be a transfer out if we get some early news, but I think I'd still like to go with a punt here at 5.0, one of the most lethal attacking players in the tournament. I'll say France have been quite unlucky, I would say, to concede their goal so far, so Theo Hernandez is still a fantastic pick for me. And Mela here versus Australia. Yes, we've seen Australia be quite dominant, I would say, from set pieces, and that's probably their only route to actually score versus a team like Denmark here. Denmark still looked relatively good versus France, much more average and much more tame versus a team like Tunisia, but I'm still expecting for a clean sheet here for Mela at the very minimum. We've also seen that Mela has been simply an astounding attacking left back for this Danish national team for a long time now, so I don't really think there's anything to miss out on at 4.5. I think he's an absolute steal here as well. With Rome, I think he's very similar. Another left back here, we actually have 4 left backs and Dumfries on the right, but Rome looked fantastic versus Spain. Couple errant crosses, but he's much more of an upgrade on anyone else who can play in the left back positions. You can clearly see that Hansi Flick does prefer him when you also compare it to some of the substitutions in the defense for the German backline. Rome is someone who's actually been constant, and I would say he was very attacking versus Japan, also earning that penalty there. I'm expecting here this to be a game where Costa Rica probably can't score. Costa Rica quite lucky also to score versus Japan, so I really find it quite hard to see how Germany, who will be fighting for their tournament lives as well in this game, struggle to actually get a clean sheet versus Costa Rica. I think this is a great opportunity to bank on someone at 4.5. Great steal here for the German national team. With Rocher, you have a game versus Ghana. It's going to be a very tough game, but at 4.0 I think is a much better option than someone like an Onda. You could also look at some of the other options, maybe such as the Serbian keeper, but I think Serbia versus Switzerland is a much tougher game than Uruguay versus Ghana prospectively. Uruguay just simply looked like a very rock-solid defense versus a team like South Korea. And of course, whilst Ghana were able to score versus Portugal, and we don't really know the updates on match day or day 4 tomorrow, I would still think that Rocher is a great option for the time being. And for me, he's going to be rounding out my keeper defense line with a double up the Danish team up top as well. Those two players, I think, really will get a clean sheet as well. Noppert and Dumfries. Qatar were pretty lucky, I would say, to score versus Senegal. They had 2 great chances, one great Edouard Mendy save, and then another great header opportunity. But this was also at a stage of the game where I would say Senegal had dropped off a little bit. I think Netherlands have everything to play for here, and I really struggle to see how they wouldn't be able to keep a clean sheet, because they have also matched up very well versus a team like Ecuador, who I expect to do well similarly versus a team like Senegal. If we look at the midfield now, what I've actually added is Frankowski, and Frankowski was the punt I had to kind of do to move in from Sosa to Alba. So unfortunately I have to keep Frankowski to start match day 3, but I could think about immediately transferring him out. If let's say someone blanks in day 1, I can easily move Frankowski out of my team. Even if let's say in day 2 some of the earlier games happens and I have the chance to upgrade Frankowski, I will probably do that. We have a great selection of midfielders here. I've actually gone for a lot of differential picks, and you can see here in my bench what I've gone for. I've gone for Musiala and Ziyech. I think Musiala was the astounding player versus Spain. As a Spaniard, I have to say he looked better than both Gavi and Pedri. Obviously, they play in different positions. Gavi and Pedri more, so let's say center mid players. Musiala, of course, a little bit of a free-floating 10, someone who's an astoundingly good dribbler, and also was very creative in that game. I think just Spain were actually playing at a very high level defensively, and they dropped off around 70 minutes when Sané came on the pitch as well, and Musiala was still the dominant force in that game. Very hard to actually deal with, and simply put here versus Costa Rica, a side that really didn't put much of a challenge versus a team like Spain. And I think Germany finding a little bit more of attacking flexibility when Gundogan's off the pitch, and they play this sort of 4-2-3-1 structure here with Leroy Sané. I think Musiala is going to be the one to dominate in this game. Unfortunately, he was not able to be clinical in the game for Spain. He had a great one-on-one opportunity versus Unai Simon, tried to go far post and it didn't really work out, but I still think that he's got his chances versus Costa Rica. It's going to be a much more simpler game for him, and I'm hoping he gets to show another dominant display there again. As I said, Frankowski's going to be a lock in the team, but he will be someone that I will be looking to upgrade, and I'll update you guys with that on Twitter and also through a pinned comment on YouTube if I actually get the chance to do that and make a decision. Pulisic and Di Maria and Ziyech, these are the kind of aces in the hole here. Di Maria, of course, is going to be owned by a lot of the player base, but I think Di Maria still has a great game here versus Poland. There's no reason to really move away from him. The Argentina goal-scoring odds are still very, very high. I still think they have a lot to play for. Poland, for me, is not necessarily a great defense themselves, even though Szczęsny is one of the leading goalkeepers of the tournament. I would say here Di Maria has a chance to still put in a lot of key passes, which is actually how he's gotten a lot of points thus far. Pulisic is still, for me, the key man versus Iran. And I would say the interesting thing here was that he had a great game versus England, and I'm hoping that he actually gets to finally find the score sheet there. He was also getting the assist in the Wales game, so you can say, of course, that he's been one of the talismans for this USA team. And it's very clear that they still try to look for him when they're attacking. And he is trying to take on that responsibility of being the leader of the team, getting those chances, and I think he will find some of these breakthroughs versus Iran, and I'm hoping he gets to be a great punt there. As far as Ziyech, I think the Canadian defense is absolutely abysmal. When looking at the Canada versus Croatia game, I think that's all you really need to tell about this Canadian defense. It's all over the place. Of course, you have Davies, a great punt in the defensive position, but that doesn't really mean anything or bode anything for the defense. They let in so many chances before the first half whistle came through versus Croatia, and I thought Croatia actually were able to score maybe even 5-6 goals in that game, just simply because of how poor this Canadian team is. Yes, they create a lot of chances, this Canadian team, but at the same time, they're very, very, I would say, open at the back, and it's a very easy game, in my opinion, for Ziyech to actually dominate through the key passes element of that pain, because I don't think the offside line or the offside trap of Canada is even existent. And Ziyech, of course, has some relatively good games for Morocco lately, and he's really enjoyed himself in the previous game as opposed to Matchday 1. So I'm expecting Ziyech to be a very great punt at 7.0. And as I said, Di Maria is going to be a great punt, very consistent pick that we've had all tournament long. I'm expecting hopefully finally a goal from Di Maria, but if key passes and assist is what we're going to get from him, I think that's already consistent enough, because actually the midfielders, even though we picked them for the goal scored, they haven't been too consistent from that point of view. Most of the strikers are still like where we should be spending most of our money, because they're the talismans for the big team so far. And so if we actually look at the forwards, it's exactly what I'm talking about with the talismans. We've got Gakpo, Messi, and Mbappe. Gakpo is a little bit of an outside shout. I did try to go with Depay for my first suggested Matchday 2 team, but we did actually get news from Louis van Gaal that Depay was only going to play 45 minutes, so I actually moved to Lewandowski, as you guys know, based on the YouTube comment that I made and also the tweet that I made as well. So with Gakpo, I think he's been one of the exceptional players of the tournament so far. He's been very good in open play, an astoundingly good header in Matchday 1, and I just think that's going to continue versus Qatar, a very open team that didn't really have much to offer versus Senegal. Senegal were able to run over them very late in the second half, even though Qatar were able to score a goal 2-0 down. And for me, Gakpo has the opportunities mostly here, and much better than Bergwijn as a pick, because Bergwijn, he could play 45 minutes a game, whereas I think Louis van Gaal has a full trust within Gakpo to actually play 90 minutes out here and actually secure probably first place for the Netherlands in this group. As far as Messi and Mbappe, there's really not much to really talk about. These two players are fantastic. Messi has been, I would say, close to being at his best so far for Argentina, even though the rest of his team has pretty much let him down. We've had some shocking performances from players like Rodrigo de Paul so far, and players like Enzo Fernandez do seem to be able to step up. Julian Alvarez as well seems to be able to step up as well in those gaps, and I think Messi versus Poland is going to be a great matchup regardless, because Poland haven't offered too much so far in this tournament, and I would say Messi is still on track to qualify. Still looks like the main man for Argentina, still slipping through a great amount of chances, passes. He doesn't get the key pass metric as a forward, but I think he's going to get the goals and assists, and I don't think there's a worry there. He's going to be my second captaincy option here next to Mbappe. Mbappe was someone that we missed out completely in Matchday 2. We thought about Lewandowski being a better option, but I think Mbappe was imperious in Matchday 2 versus Denmark as well, and it clearly shows that he probably is the best player in the world right now. Simply put, I think Mbappe is the player to captain here. He's probably going to go for the Golden Boot. I'm hoping that he gets the chance to play versus Tunisia here. And worst case scenario, we have Messi as the secondary option, which I think is fantastic, because Messi's tournament life is on the line, and Argentina probably still have the absolute best chances to qualify in that group versus Poland here. And that's going to be my team for this week. I think what you have to look at with Matchday 3 is try to assess what positions teams are in. So for example, if a team like Brazil draws tomorrow, maybe they actually need to play a much stronger team in Matchday 3, so on and so forth. These are the kind of things I'd like to look at too, with maybe some of the predicted lineups with Uruguay and Portugal, if you want to make some last minute transfers there. But ultimately, Uruguay and Portugal is a very tough game to decide. I'd probably try and skip out as much on the Portuguese and Uruguay players as possible, because we don't really know where that result can go. If, let's say, Portugal win that game, smash that game versus Uruguay, then you don't really want to have the Uruguayan keeper, I suppose, for the next match day. As far as the Portuguese players, if they smash, they're very likely through towards the rest of the tournament, so you don't really need players like Bruno Fernandes or Cristiano Ronaldo who could easily be rested in that game because the Portuguese team has enough depth to carry match day 3 onwards. So that's going to be my thoughts so far. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead, and I'll see you guys in the next video.